Max served in the U.S. Army Special Operations Aviations with the 160th SOAR for 17 years. Throughout that time, he flew on the MH-47G Chinooks as a door gunner and flight engineer instructor. He later moved on to leadership roles within the organization. His service strengthened his compassion for helping others. As he retired from the military, mental health counseling provided a way to continue that service to people in need. Max participated in an unpaid internship with Centerstone for 6 months after the transition out of the military. I'm actually interested to ask you about that. He worked in the regional intervention program, helping children and families reinforce positive behaviors through positive attention. Max has been accepted into the graduate counseling program at Trevecca Nazarene University. He will start at the end of April 2026. So, man, end of the month.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Cool. Well, Max, thank you so much for your time, your willingness to jump on. I'd love just a short, give everybody a short snippet, like who you are, where you come from. Obviously, Special Operations 160th, but take us back a little bit of, maybe where you came from, how you got in the military, and then we'll move through.
Originally, I'm from New York. I grew up in Valley Stream, so it's Nassau County, right on the border of Queens. I'm son of immigrants. Both my parents immigrated from Poland. Their parents had survived World War II, Holocaust, all that. So there was a little bit of remnants of that in my childhood. My parents got divorced when I was 7 years old, and then that had its impacts, of course, on me. And my childhood was filled with love, but it was also filled with a lot of issues. And ultimately, that's, I think, what led to my decision, not reading books and learning what I'm learning. I think I wanted stability. I wanted to have control of the things in my life, and the military was actually the first opportunity for that. I experienced that. And, I tell people now that the best decision I made as far as my life goes and my career goes was join the military. And then my second best as far as a career goes was retiring, because I knew that it was time for that. And I knew that the effects that it was having on me all the time. I was just doing a lot of self-assessing, and I realized that the time and the attention I was giving my family was not theirs. It was that, it was time for that. And I'm grateful for the military, and I love every experience I've had, even, the good and the bad. But that's kind of molded me and molded where I am now. So I went to conventional force initially. I was up at Fort Wainwright, Alaska for 3 years. Deployed for 15 months with them, came back, and then I assessed for 160th, and then I stayed at Fort Campbell, 160th, the rest of my career, and then retired. It was, like I said, I had gone through, my favorite part of my career was flying. I enjoyed that the most. It was interesting, and I enjoyed it. I love working with all the customers that we worked with. They're all extreme professionals, and it was exhilarating. It was awesome. It was great to work with. In my organization and the organizations we work with, just be surrounded by utmost professionals. And, when you're surrounded by that all the time, I think we lose sight of the fact that it's a small group.
Mm-hmm.
So that taught me a lot. And then later on, I was the first sergeant of the assessment company, Green Platoon. I did that. And then the regiment HHC. And then that was kind of my breaking point. I learned so much because I had such a diverse group of individuals as instructors in Green Platoon, former 5th Group guys, former Rangers, former 160th guys, and they were all very knowledgeable in what they did. And it really opened my eyes onto just the assessment process itself and humans. And I really enjoyed that experience. And then I moved over. The HHC regiment position, it was, I was dipping, I was an EA at the time. I was dipping my feet in as a first sergeant, but also got a little glimpse of what it'd be like to be a sergeant major. And it wasn't for me. And there's no shame for me to say that. At first, initially, before I made that decision, it was. But I felt like I was just moving further and further away from what I actually enjoyed doing, which was people. And to kind of arrive where I am now, pursuing a degree in mental health counseling, and to become an LPC. It was at the time I was at a crossroad. I was selected for the academy. I turned it down. I finally went to mental health for the first time in my career on my own, not command directed. And uh, it, I was just stressed out. I was burnt out. I was trying to divide my attention between work and family, and it wasn't working. And I told in confidence to my therapist at the time, I said, I hate my job. I
Mhm.
love the people. I love helping them and doing all those things, but I hate my job. And I should, and it felt wrong to say, but I was like, I don't enjoy this. I love leading people. I love helping them, but I did not enjoy my job. And he said, is there any part of it that you enjoy? I said, yes. I enjoy talking to my soldiers and people and trying to help them, trying to figure out these problems that don't have concrete solutions to. And a lot of times soldiers would come in and they would sit down with me and they want my attention. And I'd put aside the things probably administratively more important. I'd just put them to the side and I would spend an hour talking to them. And next thing I know, I'd be drowning in the administrative stuff, but I felt like it was worth it. So I told my therapist that, and he said, well, go with that. If that seems to be the direction you want to go. He exposed to me the counseling options to pursue in the military, to transition, to become an officer and all that stuff. I was excited for the first time in a long time about something, and it felt truly inspired. But then I got depressed because I said that would mean another 7 to 10 years of service, and I can't, I didn't realize how burnt out and stressed out I was. And just the thought of it made it that much worse. So I decided I'm going to retire. And honestly, retiring with a pension and most likely disability rating and all that made the transition and decision much easier because financially I'd be much more stable. And I'd have the GI Bill to pursue a degree. It has been that way. Sorry, don't know if you want me to keep going.
Yeah, you're good.
So that's how I arrived there. But the previous experiences and my personality as well kind of brought me to where I was to pursue the counseling route, and then more specifically the licensed professional counselor. I applied to Vanderbilt, and I know why I did it now. I was accepted. I would have been accepted into the Bass Military Scholars Program to cover what the GI Bill wouldn't cover, but I did not get accepted into the counseling program. It hurt my pride a little bit at first, but I think it was one of the best things to happen because the next round, I applied to 5 universities in the area and I got accepted to Trevecca. And it led to me going to their info session. And I realized the importance of if a new university offers an information session on their program, that I think that is what answered my questions, whether or not it was between marriage and family therapist and licensed professional counselor. I knew that I wanted to work with individuals. I knew I wanted to help them. I knew I wanted to discover these things. I just didn't know the differences between the two. And the information session is kind of what dispelled those rumors and made me make my decision. Clinical social worker, licensed clinical social worker was not the route that I wanted to go because I had a little bit of a glimpse of what they did by working in the internship that was filled with social workers, the
Mm.
6-month internship with Centerstone. Not that I think what they do is great work. It didn't align with exactly what I wanted to accomplish. They're more concerned with the environment that the children and whoever it is exists in, and making those changes and being advocates for people. And it's great work. It's just I more so align with either LPC or the MFT profession. When I went to the information session, they described the differences, and I was kind of torn because, not going too much into detail, my father was an alcoholic. My mother struggled with mental health issues, still does. So I recognize those things, and I think that is what made me more empathetic to people. Just growing up in an environment, picking up on social cues, body language, and always checking in. And now I'm reading the book, The Body Keeps the Score. So it's explaining a lot of those things. So I was torn because the MFT route explores those systems. It's a systematic approach to why the individual is having these issues, but it's also combined with the family and marriage. So you can do individual therapy, but it's more so oriented towards family and marriage. I think the one thing that drew me in was the systematic approach, because I felt very strongly at the time that, and I still do somewhat, that the systems in which you exist help shape, your view of the world, and like it did with me, my empathy. And I was always looking for reassurance. I was always trying to look for stability, and it led to my decisions later on in life. But then, now reading the book and learning, I went to also warrior camp through TRR, and focused primarily on EMDR, but did other modalities that worked perfectly with it. And I continue to see the EMDR therapist. Trauma is a big part of our community, and trauma is, well, our community and childhood as well. And trauma is what the LPC route, I think, focuses more on, any individual diagnosis and all that stuff. So that is why I ultimately landed on LPC.
Any hesitation in that process? It sounds like you've kind of systematically narrowed it down, and you know what you want to go to. But I'm curious, were there any hesitations or any hiccups along the way that you can relate to, as maybe somebody that's watching this similarly? What, obviously, you had a great point, like, hey, go to any info sessions you can get. Is there anything else that you would recommend somebody that's kind of walking behind you that they could do?
Yeah, for sure. Number one, like I said, I was grateful for I am grateful now. I wasn't at the time. I'm grateful that Vanderbilt did not take me in the program, and I'll explain why. This was before I did the EMDR, the warrior camp, and all that stuff. And my trauma, my experiences I still had that self-image that I was not worth what I believe I'm, what I truly am. I've since worked on that, and the things that I'd done in my life, experienced and all that stuff, helped feed that self-image of low self-esteem. Even though you wouldn't see that if you saw me every day, I was doing everything I could to combat that, but inside, the emotional side of my brain always reminded me of that. And so once again, I was trying to, because Vanderbilt's a prestigious university, a 6% acceptance rate. They boast that all the time. I did their interview process. It was 3 hours long. It was grueling. I felt good about it. I gave the best I could. But it was, to me, and this is nothing against Vanderbilt. I'm not angry with them, or I hold no contempt, but it felt cold. It didn't feel like it aligned with the counseling program. It was very, matter of fact, and, which it should be. It's an assessment of your ability, but I had the complete opposite at Trevecca. And I applied to Lipscomb as well. Both are universities of faith, but the counseling programs are separate from the faith side of it, because they have to meet state requirements, so it cannot be influenced by any faith. But through the emails alone, I felt like I was welcomed. Through the info session, throughout the interview process was in person with 2 professors versus the virtual interview with Vanderbilt with 30 others. And it was highly psychological, which it makes sense. It's a psychological program, but there was no order. So between the 30 of us, it was, hey, here's a scenario. This kid is depressed. His grades are slipping. Answer how you'd answer that, how you tackle the situation. And then you all look throughout the room and you go, well, I want to answer a question. I want to do best by myself and give myself the best opportunity, but I also don't want to seem selfish. I don't want to take the time of others that are trying to fight for this program as well. So I know that those things are being assessed, but it was one on two professors and myself. They had their questions already, and it seemed warmer, and it seemed professional, and I just had a really good feeling when I went to Trevecca, which unfortunately I did not with Vanderbilt. So I would recommend to, I don't know how best to put this, but kind of do some introspection, some soul searching to see if you are trying to make up for those assessments of yourself, those shortcomings, by applying to a certain university, when in all reality, don't it shouldn't, how good of a counselor or a social worker you'll be is not tied to the institution that you go to, but with what we've experienced and society as well, we do that. So I would say to kind of make that, to have that real conversation with yourself, make that assessment before you say, I'm committing to this university alone. And if I don't make it into this university, I have these backup options, but we all know how that goes. The primary option doesn't happen. And now I'm going to be, depressed about it and all these other things. So being very real with yourself and realistic with the outcomes is, I say, one of the most important things before you even then dive into which program you want to get into. Because that was, given the situation for me, transition from the military, it ended abruptly by my choice, but not with a great plan in hand. And then putting all eggs in one basket with Vanderbilt, that not happening, not addressing my mental health and all that stuff was a recipe for disaster. But then addressing mental health, fixing these things somewhat, continuing it, and then truly enjoying the application process and realizing that the place that I had selected as a secondary was absolutely my primary, and I'm enjoying where I'm going. And then another experience I had in Warrior Camp was, if you're a good therapist, a client is never going to look at you and say, you're really good, but what university did you go to? You know what I mean? So we place so much stock into that in ourselves, because I think we're trying to measure our own self-worth, but not realizing that if we're a good counselor, it doesn't matter. You get the tools, and then you learn these other modalities afterwards, like EMDR and everything else. And the client's not going to stop you, say, you're really good, like I said, and hold on. What university did you go to? It's not going to happen. I've never done it. So that is, I think, in my opinion, one of the most important things, so that you can be okay with the decisions moving forward, and have a great plan that fits your needs, and as well as the realistic assessment of your abilities to go places. And then info sessions, but trying multiple info sessions. They're free, and actually some of them, if you attend them, they will waive the $85 or whatever it is application fee just by attending. So now you don't even have to pay an application fee, and you get a feel for the university. They bring in professors, they bring in students that are in the current program to talk to you. You can ask whatever questions. So it is an investment in your future for sure. And then you can also have them help you figure out which program you want, based on whatever life experiences and whatever questions you may have as to why you want to pursue the certain route.
If someone's never been, right, they never darken the door of a therapist or psychologist outside of mandatory check-ins at a command, and they're coming out of the soft community, for you, obviously, it's your own experience. You can only kind of relate to that. But how important do you think starting that process for yourself? And I know some grad programs quite literally require that you have to be in therapy or be seeing a clinician as you're going through grad school. So I'm just curious, for somebody that's coming behind you that's maybe never taken that step, how important do you think that step is as you're entering in this new, I'll say, pipeline?
I think even if you're not entering the pipeline, it's crucial. It's life changing. It changed my life, because it's a gradual process of this change within yourself, and it happens little by little. And next thing you know, you're here mentally. You don't even realize how it happened, and it becomes your new norm. And for me, when I finally took the step, and it was actually because of Soft Network, Martha Herb was interviewing me for the pipeline, and she said, I think you'd benefit from the Warrior Camp with TRR. And I said, yeah, whatever. Because for me, and nothing against the military, they do everything they can within their power. They're overwhelmed with mental health issues and understaffed as just my belief. And I think that the military mental health system acts more as a triage. I think like an emergency room. Are you going to kill yourself or not? If you're not, then take these medications. Maybe they'll make life a little more bearable. And at the same time, you're so busy all the time. You don't have that. Your brain knows it's preoccupied with, and we do it on purpose too. We're preoccupied with all the things we need to do that we don't have the time or don't even want to give the time to address these issues. But so if you had a bad experience, which I did, with military mental health, because I wasn't going to kill myself, but I was really hurting. When you find a good program that is dedicated to it, and you find a good therapist, it is life changing. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not knocking the military mental health system. They're doing the best they can with what they have. But the real advice I can give is, don't judge therapy, counseling, whatever, based off of a few experiences that may have not met your needs. There are good therapists out there. There are good programs out there that will change your life. So for me, addressing and resolving, not just talking, I've changed my view a little bit on CBT, but addressing and resolving those experiences, those traumas in your childhood, your life, your military career. When I came home from warrior camp, I was smiling and I was saying hi to random people. And I didn't realize that those things that I had experienced were feeding my survival system. So if anybody if anybody represented a threat to me, I'd shut them out. I wouldn't even give them a chance. And that was just me trying to my brain trying to preserve my life. So, and it wasn't rational. It's the emotional side of the brain, the limbic system working and all that. And it was preventing any more positive experiences for me. And that was my new norm. This is life. Like I said, it was a gradual creep. So you accept that. And I know I'm all over the place, but back to the warrior camp, I didn't know who Martha Herb was. I said, this lady's very nice. She's very professional. And I looked her up and I said, oh crap, she was a rear admiral. And I was like, okay. She recommended this thing. So I said, okay. And just my interaction, she was very good at what she did. I said, for that reason alone, I'm going to give her recommendation a strong consideration. I contemplated it and I said, okay, I'll do it. And I applied. And then Eva Usadi called me and did an interview. And then she's like, all right, you're going to come over, we're going to do the camp next month. I said, whoa, already? That's too soon. I think I'm going to back out. And she said, please don't. You'd be a great addition to this. I said, okay, all right, fine. I did it. My arms were crossed the first day. Everybody's was. And when we saw the genuine nature of everybody's intent there, they're all unpaid. They're doing it pro bono. And they just want to help veterans. That alone was the first step. And then the EMDR, I never had experienced EMDR, and it resolved a great deal. And then all of a sudden I can see the world from a different lens that I didn't think I'd ever be able to. It renewed that feeling of hope for healing, and then inspired me to strengthen that idea I had that, yes, we can help people. So all those things kind of fed into that. But to answer your question, come all the way back around, if it doesn't happen before the pipeline, I think at least consider it. It has to happen at some point in your life, because otherwise it'll plague you until the day that you die, because it'll sit there and it will not be resolved. So the earlier the better. And next thing you know, positive things can be happening. Your relationship with your spouse, your children, people that may be a positive impact on your life will actually have a chance now, because you'll allow them to, and you will not treat them as a threat. And what I've learned too is I've had experiences recently where there was an actual threat, almost a car crash or whatever. I responded, and then that was it. But it wasn't me thinking about this threat all day, exhausting myself. That never comes.
Right.
But that's what we've been programmed to do through our experiences. So I think it is very important. And then if you were to apply to the importance of getting everything you can out of LPC program, MFT, social work, you'd get so much more because you're more primed to receive the information as well as interact with the professors, the other students that you're going to work with, and all that stuff. So I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that was great. I'll add one final piece, something that my graduate school professor used to share, and I share it with my grad students as well. Is if you are not working on yourself, meaning doing the deeper work, and obviously it starts with therapy, uh, you're going to plateau as a clinician. And also, you're going to avoid certain clients that come into your practice. And that's not helping you, that's not helping them. And so, yeah, the more that you can continue to do the deep work, uh, face the things that you're uncomfortable facing, it's going to, from a professional standpoint, just make you a better clinician because you're constantly working on yourself and realizing where some of your blind spots are, where your inability to connect with different people and different situations present itself. So you mentioned the pipeline. How'd you hear about Soft Network in the pipeline program?
So I wasn't shy to advertise that I was retiring to everybody I was working with. I had plenty of time to kind of reflect and talk. I was going to retirement ceremonies, promotion ceremonies, interacting with the people that I was working with previously. And I talked to our chaplain, the regiment chaplain, and he said, "What are you going to do next?" And I said, "Well, after talking to my therapist, this is kind of what I've landed on. I want to move into the mental health direction, preferably licensed professional counselor, I think." And he's the one that said, "Well, hey, have you heard about the Soft Network?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And he gave me the link, and it's like a lot of things in my life. It just sat in my phone as a link. Um, it wasn't till I kind of stepped away completely from my job, my position. And also after that, I realized, many people didn't contact me anymore because I kind of gave them nothing. I'm not in a leadership role. Nothing against them. They move on and they do what they need to. But I only had few people contacting me and talking to me regularly, and it was my good friends. So that brought a bit of realism as to what was going to happen. And I caved finally and made a LinkedIn account. I didn't want to. I was against it for whatever reason. That's also what led to me applying for my internship. I typed in psychology internship and landed on Centerstone and said, let's give it a shot. But then I also instead I was like, oh, there's another thing that I had. It was the Soft Network. So then I started looking into it more. I read about it, everything that was on the website, and then I finally did it. And I was pleasantly surprised. And what it's done for me is provide a community. And it's not just community because they're, former special operations, because I always feel like the odd man out. I'm like, oh, these operators, this former SEALs and all this stuff. I'm like, I was just aviation. I didn't do anything crazy. But it is a network of people, like-minded individuals that want to help others, that want to help in the same way. And I love that. And then between the coaching that we get at the pipeline meetings with Martha and whoever else, and as well as the information sessions that we have about new therapies that are coming out, and then just the collaboration of different experiences and desires to help others. That's been awesome. I really enjoyed that. And so the combination of all these things, I kind of stumbled upon it. Maybe my mind subconsciously told me, hey, do these things. But the combination has really helped me between therapy, Soft Network, my internship, and then applying to, having that purpose again and applying to the university I applied to. It took me from a very dark place to a very inspired place and very hopeful for the future. And then now my purpose looks like helping others. And to me, that's huge.
How do you think the military prepared you for this shift into this new career?
They offer a lot. Honor Foundation offer the Skill Bridge program for internships. They offer that time off you can take to do these things to transition. It is it's better to do it while you're in, to kind of, I don't know how to call it better, but like have your military career die while you're in, because you still have the support network there versus being all alone. Um, and then, they have the normal transition programs that's for everybody, which is good because at least you got a little bit of a community between people that are getting out and they're giving you information, the financial services and all that stuff. The information is abundant. The only thing I'd say is that uh, a lot of it is optional, whether or not you take advantage of it. So somebody that may be younger or may not just be mentally healthy at the time may be overwhelmed by the amount of options and they don't know which one they need to or they should participate in. I didn't participate in the Honor Foundation, but I think a lot of people do because they want to get into corporate world and all this stuff, and that's great that they do that. I didn't because I knew exactly which direction I want to go to, and I did that soul searching before then. So it's like I don't need to use the Honor Foundation; someone else can, because I know I want to get into clinical mental health counseling. So I don't need additional help. I've already had help elsewhere, and the internship was great too because it gave me a place to show up every day. Sometimes all I did was sweep and clean the whole building so that the children showed up. They'd have a clean environment to work in. I helped them organize everything, and then I got to work with the kids. And unfortunately, it was a bunch of most of the clients were single mothers with a lot on their plate, and these kids didn't have a father figure. So to have a male figure in their life was, I can tell. And then the other women I was working with told me, they're like, these kids are going to miss you when you leave. And I'm like, I know, and I hate to leave. I'd do this, much longer, but I also have to focus on what I need to do next. So those things, they all work together. But where I think the military misses the mark, and I don't like saying that because they're doing a lot for people transitioning, but I would say mental health assessments and counseling should be mandatory. It shouldn't be this thing that's available, regardless of if you exhibit these things. A lot of people are very good at hiding it and being someone else, and what's the word? Dissociating their emotions and all that stuff. So I may present as a very stable individual, but I'm hiding all the things that are really terrorizing me. So I think that mental health should be something that's assessments, at least. Everybody who's getting out should get a mental health assessment priority. And also some of those programs, I think internships should be mandatory as well. And it's just choose whichever one you want, but do it. Don't go home on whatever you take leave or absence and you just sit there doing nothing and dwelling. I think those things combined, not doing something, not having new purpose, whatever it looks like, or at least dabbling to see for sure this welding job is not what I want to do, but at least you're out there learning something and being with somebody. But I don't think it should be optional. I think it should be mandatory that people participate in both those things, because it's at least a move in the civilian direction, because you do it as a guided way with military, but in the civilian sector. And then also the mental health aspect should be not as needed, but mandatory.
Last question before we wrap up. What skills were you surprised that were translatable into this part of pursuing your next career? Things that were either there from childhood, but obviously you used in the military or were developed in the military that you really on paper maybe didn't see that they aligned, but you're using now or applying in as you start grad school.
Yeah. Emotional intelligence, soft skills, and reading people. I hate that sounds bad, but reading people's body language, their true intentions, because especially those things were more honed as I got higher into leadership positions, especially in assessment. There was a lot of times where people will come to you with problems or issues that you don't know what their intent is behind why they're bringing it to you. So, for example, soldiers got caught with had vapes and stuff like that while they were doing combatives. And we had to make the decision, my commander and I, whether or not we're going to drop these soldiers. We did drop them, but the decision was whether or not we'd let them try again or just send them on their way. But then dealing with the emotions right in front of you, which is uncomfortable. Someone getting mad at you, saying things to you, or crying right in front of you. It's uncomfortable. Most want to avoid it. And the correct thing, in my opinion, is not to avoid it and address it there and be honest. So honest assessments, they don't have to be brutal, but they can be constructive and honest. But telling somebody, and I had examples of that previous given to me where I inflated my ego a little bit with my abilities, and then someone constructively brought me down and told me, hey, you're not the best writer in the company, or whatever it is. And I said, wow, that really hurt. But I really appreciate someone telling me the truth instead of inflating my ego or beating around the bush or whatever. So I kind of made it a point after that to do that, especially if we were getting rid of somebody because they weren't performing, telling them exactly how it was. Hit the initial blow, it hurt for them, I could tell. But eventually they appreciated it. There's no misunderstanding. There was no, trying to, wondering of what the true intent was. It was put out there. So people appreciated that, even if it was bad news. So when you apply that to counseling, obviously there's differences there, but if you keep that in your mind, then I think you can have better interactions with people. And that's what I learned, especially there, is like some of the uncomfortable situations can actually, most times can lead to positive outcomes. But if you never have the courage to do so, then you won't experience those positive outcomes. And then you'll reinforce the idea that, hey, let's just sugarcoat it, or let's just beat around the bush, or never say it outright. Let's be passive. And hopefully they don't find out what I truly said behind, from somebody else, because that's embarrassing. So those kind of shifts in how I interact with people, I think, were important, and now can somewhat translate to how I deal with clients. So I think that those were great skills.
Yeah, that's a great example. I'm always amazed when I work with clients, but also in the soft network, how many skills are actually transferable. You think, the military and clinical mental health counseling are very, very different, but they all deal with people. And yeah, there's so many, and you just brought one that I hadn't even thought of with that example of kind of remediation and dealing with somebody and not avoiding the emotions and actually addressing them. Because man, I can't tell you how many grad students I've worked with over the years that they struggle with conflict. They struggle with the immediacy when a client gets upset. And so having that data bank and that experience, especially in leadership, of, hey, you're expected to address this situation, and 100% that you're going to use that very, very soon in your counseling career. Max, man, I'd love to talk a little bit more. Got to wrap it up. If anybody is interested in the pipeline program, please shoot us an email, or info@softnetwork.org, and you can hit the subject line as pipeline and ask any questions. We're going to put a few more videos together of individuals within the pipeline that come from different disciplines. We're going to have a psychologist. We're going to have a licensed clinical social worker, and discuss their journey and what they've experienced, similar to Max and his journey so far. But if you've got any information, please, any questions, please reach out. We'd love to answer any of those questions. And again, help maybe be another person similar to Max's therapist that steers them in a direction if they feel called to pursue clinical mental health. So, Max, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everything you shared.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.